Hello, nerds and nerdettes, and welcome back to the channel where once again we have a new review for you guys. Today we will be covering a technically out of print Marvel Omnibus, which is none other than Hawkeye by Matt Fraction and David Aja. This has been announced for a reprint, but at the point of shooting this video, it is still out of print. But before we get into any of the details of the book, a quick reminder that if you are looking for the reprint or any of the other books that I feature on my channel, to use the channel sponsor organicpricebooks.com. Use the code STAYNERDY for $2 off your order, or when ordering 3 or more books, you can use the code STAYNERDY, ship it together, to get 5% off that order. Also, for my manga lovers, I am a Right Stuff affiliate, so if you'd like to order from Right Stuff and support the channel, you can use my Right Stuff link down below in the description. Both the OPB code and the Right Stuff link are great ways to help support the channel, so I'll be thankful for that. But without further ado, let's get into the details of the book. So this Marvel Omnibus does have a cover price of $100 and a page count of 552 pages. So it is not a super thick omnibus, and it is a fairly quick read. And from what I have seen, the reprint is going to have the same page count as well as the same cover price. So that is super exciting. But let's go ahead and jump into the overhead shots, take a look at the art, and talk a little bit about the reading experience. And here we are, the New York Times bestseller, Hawkeye, by Matt Fraction and David Aja. Such an incredible run on the character of Hawkeye. This is the only choice of cover that I know of, at least. I think this omnibus was produced before Marvel was really into the DM variant and standard edition covers game, so this is the only cover that I know of. But obviously, the reprint coming up here will have two different covers available. Taking a quick look at the spine here, we do have a fairly simplistic spine, really pops on the shelf. And then on the back, we have a David Aja piece with Hawkeye, and this is the color palette that's kind of used throughout the run. So you kind of get a tone feeling pertaining to the art, and it does come across a very similar way throughout this specific run. Obviously, more colors than just purple and white, but still a very simplistic color palette. And it says your favorite Avenger, his favorite young Avenger, their crime-solving dog. Go Team Hawkeye. That kind of does introduce you to a lot of the key players and really the focus of this entire run. But let's go ahead and get under this dust jacket and take a look at the pretty cool design that is on the board itself. Here we are under the dust jacket, taking a quick look at the inner flaps. Not too sure how much that is coming up. Let me adjust the lighting here for you a little bit. There we go. So we do have a brief synopsis on the left flap, and then of course on the right flap a little bit about the creators, which is pretty standard for most Marvel dust jackets. But we can go ahead and spread this baby out and take a look at the art that is on the board. And here we are on the board, obviously not wraparound cover, but it is very Hawkeye-centric. It is stylistically designed, and it does pop once you remove the dust jacket, so I do enjoy it. Taking a quick look at the binding, we do have a fairly decent eye there. I'm not exactly in the center of the book, but you can see how the binding does lift off the book. So you don't have a whole lot of gutter loss. I didn't during my reading experience either. So definitely a very good binding for this specific omnibus. All right, let's get right into the omnibus. We do have some bright purple end pages. Purple is going to be a theme throughout this run, obviously, because it's a Hawkeye run. We do have the Hawkeye symbol there as the title page. And then we have the creators page. Obviously, Matt Fraction is your writer. You do have David Aja doing most of the art and Matt Hollingsworth doing most of the coloring. They are working fairly symbiotic throughout this entire run, so make note of that when reading. They definitely play off each other very well. It's extremely enjoyable. You do have some other artists such as Javier Pulido, Steve LeBaire, Jess Ham on some issues, but most of the time, especially during the main Hawkeye series and issues, it is going to be David Aja on interiors. Then you do get a Young Avengers Presents Hawkeye, which is a issue where you are going to quite literally be introduced to the character of Kate Bishop, her relationships and friendships that she has with some characters that are included in the Young Avengers, which is why I recommended the Heinberg Young Avengers run, because that introduces all these other characters that make an appearance during this issue and really gets you more familiar with not only Kate Bishop, but a lot of her supporting cast in the Young Avengers lineup. So definitely recommend that as some prior reading, but I still think this is fairly new reader friendly. But we jump right into the first issue of actual Hawkeye. Make note of the color palette that's used and the art almost working together throughout the entire run. That's definitely a highlight of this book. But we do pick up with Clint Barton in New York, essentially training Kate Bishop as Hawkeye. They both are sharing the mantle of Hawkeye. And you get to see them work together not only as a team, but as a family at points, as well as a solo individual heroes that kind of intertwine and commingle with one another at times. You do pick up with Clint Barton, who owns an apartment building that was formerly owned by a Russian mobster type villainous character that exists in New York. That those characters and that villain are very reminiscent to the sweatsuit gang that is featured throughout the Hawkeye TV show as well. So if you did enjoy their characters throughout that series, you will enjoy their character in this. Just be prepared to hear the word bro about a million times. You have been warned. But you do pick up with Clint Barton owning a formerly owned by a Russian mobster apartment building, and because of him and his acquisition of that particular apartment building, then being a focus of this particular gang, and he then eventually gets even more into the focus of the particular gang and villains of New York, specifically Madame Mask, because of a little story that you get told through here called The Tape, which obviously we're not going to reveal too much, but because of the events that take place during that story, Madame Mask, as well as a lot of other villains, kind of get shafted due to the efforts of Kate Bishop and Clint Barton, as well as S.H.I.E.L.D., but the main focus then gets put onto Clint Barton and Kate Bishop as a team, and the villains of New York then come together and decide that they both need to die. And that is pretty much the main plot of the story. You are introduced to a lot of different characters, such as the Clown, who is another villainous character that you get introduced during this run. You also get introduced to Lucky, the crime-fighting dog, or the pizza dog, who is probably more Kate's dog than Clint's, but it is a dog they share together in some ways. But one of the most interesting parts of this book is you do get to see more of Clint Barton's or Hawkeye's childhood and the investigation and development of his relationship with not only his father, but also his brother Barney, who you do get introduced a little bit more formally throughout this run. And it is quite enjoyable because I feel like when it pertains to the main characters and the villains that make an appearance during this run, there is a very grounded approach to the way they act and the way they function, and it is a breath of fresh air, especially in the capes and cowls kind of setting that Marvel and DC kind of operate in with their superheroes. But these characters during this particular run and the way they interact and conversate and go about their relationships are very human-like, and it is very, very interesting to say the least. But you do eventually, due to a series of unfortunate events, have Clint and Kate kind of going their separate ways and going about their own separate missions Kate going into LA and kind of existing with the West Coast Avengers and doing private detective or private investigating in that area of the world, while Clint is still a kind of neighborhood level superhero in New York and preparing for the eventual war that the sweatsuit gang or the Russian mob or Madame Mask's associates are going to bring to his doorstep, to his acquired apartment, and the tenants that reside within, who he has become quite fond of and very close with. So he wants to deeply protect them and not allow any harm to happen to them. And you really get to see the character of Clint unfold in front of you when it pertains to the pressures of being a hero as a human man that just has a bow and arrows, as well as a ex-reformed villain and a man that has went through a lot of traumatic events recently, from the loss of friends to major deaths, maybe not including his own in some form or fashion. So you definitely get to see a troubled and trauma damaged man, especially when it comes to kind of his day to day and his relationships with characters like his ex wife. So definitely a very human take on the character of Hawkeye. But you do have an eventual full out war slash standoff that takes place between Hawkeye and Kate Bishop and the tenants of the apartment building and the clown, the Russian mob. And you do get some breadcrumbs kind of laid for a potential future of this story. So definitely really good stuff. The climax is absolutely great. The characters are great. If you want to learn more about Hawkeye and read more about Hawkeye, this is the book you need to get. This is really the only title he's gotten other than being a leader on some Avengers teams. But this is the extras. You're kind of going to get a lot of scripting and paneling. It is fairly interesting, but we don't want to dive too deep in there, so there is something for you guys to discover. But that does wrap up the overhead portion, so let's head back to the table. And welcome back, nerds and nerdettes. So if you could not tell, I did very much enjoy this run. I feel like most people did, so I don't feel like I'm in the minority there. But the interesting aspect about this specific title is Hawkeye never really got a dedicated title for him as a character. You do see him pick up the leadership mantle on two separate teams in the Marvel Universe, that being the West Coast Avengers as well as the Thunderbolts, but you never really saw a title dedicated to him as a character until this point, and even then you do have him somewhat sharing the focus with the Young Avengers Hawkeye, Kate Bishop. And because of her inclusion in the story, I am going to give somewhat some recommended reading, which is going to be the Heinberg Young Avengers run. And that's mainly because that is where you're going to see her introduction and her taking up the mantle of Hawkeye. And it pretty much does lead directly into this omnibus and this run. I do think the omnibus does very well kind of depicting what point she's at in the beginning of the story, but like with anything, the more context you have, the more payoff you're going to have. So that's the main reason I am recommending that specific run before jumping into this run. But I think you can probably read it without any prior knowledge at all, because very similar to Immortal Hulk, this is a run that pays off for those of us that are long-term or long-time Marvel fans or Marvel readers, but it does simultaneously pay off when you are a new reader as well. So you do have a run, once again, that does support new readers and old readers simultaneously, which is fairly rare in the comic book world, at least pertaining to Marvel and DC. But throughout this entire run, you are going to learn a lot about Clint Barton, a lot about his relationships with characters in the Marvel Universe, whether they're romantic or platonic. You're going to learn a lot about his past and get a lot of fleshing out to the character and why he became the man that you witness throughout this run. You're going to have a lot of his family tree and family history explored as well, which I think is a great touch to kind of see those brutal and humble beginnings for a character like Hawkeye that we were introduced to in the Marvel Universe as a villain before he became a hero, and then eventually became a leader on two separate teams. So it is very interesting to kind of see where that character started out. But you do have a lot of mention of very traumatic events because this run does take place after Civil War as well as after Avengers Disassembled. So if you kind of know what takes place during those events at Marvel, then you probably know what I'm referencing when it pertains to what they reference throughout this run. And I actually did enjoy that they treat it like actual real life events for the character of Clint Barton, and they kind of explain it and talk about it in a way where it's almost silly but also serious at the same time, because Clint Barton is still a man and those events still did affect him on a deep emotional level, as well as the other events that take place throughout this run, those affecting him on an emotional level as well. And I think that's where the storytelling and the art really play off each other very well. Because the story, you do have a lot of moving parts and a lot of serious tones to the story overall and what's kind of taking place, even though it does have some comedic relief here and there. But David Aja's art is almost simplistic in a way where it almost counteracts the complexities of the storytelling that you're experiencing through Matt Fraction's storytelling. So I do think that they play off each other beautifully, and it is a incredible read, such a great run really in general, and to see Clint Barton and his relationships with new characters as well pertaining to the tenants at the apartment building that he owns, such a incredible read. It is so heartfelt, it is tragic, it's filled with action, it's even creepy at times. There's really two issues during this run that really get the hairs on the back of your neck standing up. So it does have a lot of enjoyable factors to this entire run, and that's exactly why the rating that I'm going to give Hawkeye by Matt Fraction and David Aja, the Omnibus, is going to be a 8.9 out of 10. I think this is a beautiful run, a essential read for Marvel fans, and definitely the read if you want to get into the character of Hawkeye and also his impact going through Kate Bishop and into the Marvel world for the foreseeable future. Definitely need to check out this read. But that does wrap up today's review, so thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear from you guys, even though I'm sure a decent majority of you guys did enjoy this run because it was very well received in the comic book community in general. But let me know if you didn't like it. I would love to hear from those of you that are not a fan of this run, didn't enjoy this run, whatever it may be. Comment down below. I would love to hear from you guys also, because really our differing opinions is what makes this world go round. So your opinions matter just as much as ours that liked the run in general. But if you are not a part of the community, hit that subscribe button to join the Illuminati. Also, if you could do me a favor and hit that thumbs up icon, it really means a lot to us on the channel. And if you did enjoy today's video and you want to get notified anytime any other content gets uploaded, then hit that bell icon. That way you can get notified. But once again, thank you for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. And of course, as always, stay nerdy.